There comes a moment in every healing journey when everything changes. The silence breaks, the voice rises. The woman who once lived in confusion and self-doubt begins to see with clarity. She stops over-explaining, stops rescuing, stops trying to prove her worth. And that's when the narcissist notices something is different. You no longer react the same. You no longer carry their emotional weight for them. You are no longer available to be used. And in that moment, a shift happens. The narcissist no longer sees you as their supply. They see you as a threat, but it won't look like fear. It will look like charm. It will look like emotional honesty. It will look like vulnerability. Sometimes it even looks like love. But what you are witnessing is not love. It is a calculated move. One final trick, designed to pull you back just enough to wound you one last time. Because a narcissist would rather destroy you than lose the illusion of control. This is not about weakness. This is about the strength that makes you untouchable, and why that strength awakens their desperation. If you've ever felt that your growth triggered someone's manipulation, or that your peace seemed to provoke chaos, you're not imagining it. Let's go deeper. When your strength threatens their mask in the beginning, the narcissist is magnetized by your light. They don't fall in love with your soul. They become obsessed with what you represent. They feed off your empathy, your depth, your softness. They test how much they can take before you notice. They push boundaries slowly and call it connection. And for a while, you stay, you forgive, you explain. You overfunction because you see their pain and you want to believe it's real. But then, something shifts. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to recognize the cycles. You stop chasing closure and you start rebuilding your inner compass. And that is when you stop being a partner in their mind. You become a mirror that reflects their emptiness. You become the reminder that their charm has limits. You become too aware, too centered, too strong. They cannot handle that version of you. Because a narcissist needs to feel in control. They don't care about intimacy. They care about domination. They don't want a relationship. They want emotional leverage. So when your light stops being available for them to feed on, they shift into panic mode. But not the kind of panic that begs or cries. It is the kind that schemes. They plan their next move carefully. Not to restore connection, but to prove to themselves that they still own a piece of you. And that's when the final trick begins. The final trick, disguised as vulnerability. When a narcissist realizes you are slipping out of their control, they reach for the mask of vulnerability. Might say they miss you. They might express regret. They might even cry. But notice this, the tears are timed. The apologies are rehearsed. The words are selected for maximum impact. They tell you everything you always wanted to hear. They speak your language. They use your healing vocabulary. They mimic emotional growth. And it almost works. Because deep down, a part of you still wants it to be real. You want your pain to have mattered. You want the story to have a redemptive arc. But what's happening isn't reconciliation. It's manipulation. This final performance is not for connection. It's for power. It is not about love. It is about domination disguised as healing. And this is where many people fall back into the cycle. Not because they're weak, but because they're human. Because hope is a powerful thing. Because the longing to be seen and validated runs deep. But now, you have eyes that see through illusions. And that changes everything. You no longer react. You observe this as the turning point. The moment the narcissist expected you to break, but instead, you watch silently. You listen without explaining. You feel the old emotions rise, but you don't act on them. You let the moment pass. You recognize the pattern. You name it internally. And then you walk away with your dignity intact. This is the kind of strength they never prepared for. Not loud strength, not angry strength, but silent, grounded, embodied strength. The strength that no longer needs to prove. The strength that no longer hopes for change from someone who refuses to change themselves. You stop defending yourself. You stop arguing with their version of the story. You stop giving them access to your nervous system. And when you don't flinch, they feel it. They realize they have no more cards left to play. And that is when the power shifts completely. When closure comes from within, what breaks the cycle isn't revenge. It's clarity. It's peace. It's the decision to close the door quietly. You no longer need them to understand. You no longer need them to take responsibility. You no longer need closure, because you gave it to yourself. And this is the moment their final trick fails. Not because they didn't try hard enough, but because you no longer live in the version of yourself they once controlled. you have outgrown the pattern, you have returned to your truth, and you no longer seek validation from the person who taught you to question your reality. This is strength, and it's not something you shout, it's something you become. If you're in the middle of this healing process and want to understand your patterns on a deeper level, there's a way to begin that inner work today. The Jung method offers a path to reconnect with your true self and step into your own power. The link is in the pinned comment. The quiet power that ends the game you don't win by proving. You win by no longer playing. When you stop trying to decode their words, when you stop trying to save the relationship, when you stop rehearsing what you'll say, if they call again, something extraordinary happens. You return to yourself. Your time is no longer spent in emotional confusion. Your energy is no longer trapped in constant analysis. You stop looking for signs and start listening to your body. Peace feels unfamiliar at first. It almost feels wrong, because chaos was your baseline for so long. But then peace begins to settle in your nervous system. You sleep deeper, you breathe slower, you smile more easily, and slowly, your life becomes yours again. This is when the narcissist might try again. They may send one more message. They may bring up memories from the past. They may use other people to reach you. But now, their tactics don't land the same way. Because you've changed the inner script. You no longer need their validation. You no longer seek their closure. You no longer expect their approval. And that is the freedom they never wanted you to find. The real reason. They target your strength. The narcissist didn't come after you because you were weak. They came because you were strong, but unaware of it. You had light, but you didn't know how to protect it. You had empathy, but you didn't know it needed boundaries. You had softness, but you didn't know it could be weaponized. And now, you do. They're not afraid of your fire. They're afraid of what happens when you learn to control it. Your calm presence disturbs their chaos. Your silence breaks their illusions. Your detachment burns the strings they use to pull. Because power doesn't scream. It doesn't explain. It just is. And when a woman fully owns her emotional power, the narcissist has no access point left. No button to press. No weakness to exploit. No doorway to re-enter. They are locked out, not because you hate them, but because you love yourself too much to return. From survival to sovereignty, the biggest shift isn't external. It's not about blocking their number or moving cities. It's internal. It's the shift from surviving the trauma to owning your sovereignty. You stop living on high alert. You stop waiting for the next emotional blow. You stop feeling responsible for someone else's healing. You begin to parent your own inner child. You begin to hear your intuition clearly. You begin to rebuild your nervous system with care. And what once felt like damage now becomes depth. What once felt like a wound now becomes wisdom. What once felt like loss now becomes liberation. This is the real recovery. You don't just leave the narcissist behind. You'll leave behind the version of you that needed them. And that's when your energy begins to expand. That's when you attract new experiences. That's when you find peace that doesn't depend on anyone else. Because you are no longer seeking love from someone who doesn't know how to give it. You are becoming the source. Why the final trick always fails. Eventually, every narcissist has a final trick. It could be a fake emergency, a fabricated crisis, a seductive promise of healing, or a sudden shift into vulnerability. But here's what they forget. They taught you what manipulation feels like. They trained your intuition. They sharpened your discernment. And now, no matter how polished their performance is, you sense the distortion. You feel the twist in your stomach. You hear the crack behind the words. Because when someone's energy is no longer in alignment, your body knows before your mind does. So even when the message seems sincere, you don't reply. Even when the story seems urgent, you don't rush in. Even when they say they've changed, you trust time, not promises. Because this time, you're not hoping. You're watching. This is how their final trick fails. It fails because your healing is not about revenge. It's about sovereignty. What strength actually looks like after abuse. Strength is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming conscious. It's not about never feeling. It's about knowing what to do with your feelings. It's not about building walls. It's about building discernment. You don't stop loving. You stop self-abandoning. You don't stop trusting. You start trusting yourself first. You don't stop giving. You start giving from overflow, not depletion. Because the real damage of narcissistic abuse isn't just what they did to you. It's how they trained you to do it to yourself. How they made you doubt your truth. Ignore your body, override your boundaries, explain your pain. And now, your strength is not about being above it all. It's about never losing yourself again for someone who would never do the same for you. The aftershock of your growth. When you become stronger, you might expect life to become easier, but what actually happens is you become more aware. You notice what you used to tolerate. You recognize emotional manipulation faster. You feel uncomfortable in relationships that lack reciprocity. You may feel lonelier at first, because strength often requires solitude, not isolation, but clarity, space to rebuild, silence to listen. And as you grow into this version of yourself, you begin to attract differently, not because you're performing strength, but because you've become whole. The people who come next won't feel like chaos, they'll feel like safety. They'll speak the same emotional language. They'll honor what you've had to heal to become who you are now. Because the reward for surviving the narcissist is not just peace, it's alignment. It's the life that matches your truth. What you never owe a gun. You never owe anyone another explanation for why you walked away. You never owe another moment to convincing someone to treat you well. You never owe another second to doubting your intuition. You are allowed to choose peace without permission. You are allowed to leave the story without guilt. You are allowed to heal without announcing it. And most of all, you are allowed to trust that what was taken from you will be returned in ways you could never imagine. Because the universe honors the woman who honors herself. You didn't just survive, you returned. And that return will echo through every relationship that follows. So if a narcissist sees your strength and makes one final move to regain control, know this: it's not because you're weak, it's because your power is no longer theirs to touch. Let them try. You won't bend, you won't shrink, you won't explain. Because you're not who you were. You've grown roots. You've built fire. You've become the version of yourself they hoped would never awaken. And now, you are free.